Hey guys, it's Olivie Blake, and this is me not writing. So, I meant to follow up last time someone asked to see my baby tarot cards. Here are my baby tarot cards. They're pretty funny. Actually, I don't think I'll be able to just find it, but the death card, for example, is like a kid riding like a dirt bike with like a skeleton outfit on. The hanged man is like a kid hanging upside down from like a circus hoop. Like, the grim ones are the ones I want to show you naturally, but the star is what I have pulled for today. So, yeah, I guess I can tell you what that means. I don't think this will count because I wasn't really thinking about anything as I was removing them, but sure, let's see what it says. The star, fulfillment, happiness, aspiration, dreams come true, joy, inspiration. This one angel baby is joyfully dumping the waters of emotion onto their angel baby friend. They both love it and all the good stuff is happening. This is an amazing time of harmony and spiritual growth. It's like a midnight feeding where you look out the window to the beautiful starry sky. Treasure this time. With that, let's talk about stuff. If you didn't watch my previous tarot episode, you won't learn a lot about tarot from me. You'll learn very little and you'll just observe this. But yeah, this is my usual tarot deck. It has gold foil, so my dog is here. Hello. Here we go. Well, now I'm all distracted. I think one of the things that I wanted to talk about was this month's spell read, which this never happens, by the way. He doesn't like to hang out with me. Mr. Blake's not home, and usually when Mr. Blake isn't home, my dog doesn't like to be in the same room as me. He'll go to a different room. But apparently he's feeling needy right now. Anyway, so this month's spell read, the suffragette scandal, I hope that you are enjoying it. It's definitely for the most part, it's quite lighthearted. It has a sort of side queer storyline. Plus, I think the Ask a Man column is so funny. I don't know where we're going. I would suggest reading it just for those little snippets. I thought they were so funny. And in addition, the romance is quite swoon-worthy. So hope you're enjoying that. I think we will talk about it more next. Well, the discussion will post this coming weekend, so we'll talk about it more next week. I don't know what we're doing. I think I had more things to say, but I think we're just going to move on because I can't remember what they were. Other things? Are there any other things? I had a glucose test. It was 3 hours long. Do not recommend fasting and then only having sugar water in your system. Very, very difficult. I think we'll just answer this question. I guess he'll be here for this. I don't know why we're doing this. Oh, there's a baby there. Oh. Okay. We're just going to be very careful of the baby. This is probably the most distracting way to answer a question, but we're going to do it anyway. Okay, so someone watched the video I did about women over 30 and turning 30 and just aging as a woman. I think we were specifically talking about the expectations of women, how the way we talk about women, how they look when we say, oh, they look so young, as if the point is to be young forever. So we've already had that conversation, and I am sure because it's me, we've led into all sorts of things. Now we're going to talk about aging. Oh, the baby's under there. Now we're going to talk about aging in fandom, and specifically aging in your hobbies. Things that I think lately, certainly with the Harry Potter fandom, it is very young. Fandom Twitter, book Twitter is very, very young. It's dominated by teenagers, which it wasn't before. Oh, geez. Oh, okay. Okay, he's going to be off camera now, I think. So yeah, so it wasn't before. Oh, he's just going to make me pet him. That's fun. This is a fun day. When I first joined fandom, I was... Whew. Don't sit a large dog on top of your baby. just some valid pregnancy advice from me to you. What was I saying? Okay, so fandom. When I first entered the Harry Potter fandom, I was already on the older side. I was in my mid-20s, but I didn't feel very old because I met a lot of people who were the same age, a lot of people who were, I would say that the demographic that I thought I was writing for 5 years ago or whatever were primarily grad students or in college. So they weren't that much younger, or if they were younger, they were still in sort of a similar stage of life. At that point, I had like quite recently dropped out of law school, like was still in a transition era in my life, and which has since sort of stabilized. I would say that actually the primary authors, fanfiction authors from like my generation of fic writers are either my age or older. So I come from an era of, I think, older fandom where it was acceptable, and then not that the author age changed. I still think that there are quite a lot of authors who are older than you think. One of the things that I said when I was answering this question, which I just realized I haven't read aloud yet. Okay, oh my God, this is going so well. So here we go. Here is the question. One of the things I find myself struggling with is this thing I've been seeing where people judge those who are 30 plus for having hobbies they deem to now be unsuitable. I really haven't changed much from 10 years ago or even from when I was a teenager. I've matured, as everyone does, but the basic things that make me me are still there. I still enjoy playing video games. I still get overly excited about fluffy moments between romantic leads in books and even fics. I still enjoy using the internet, which I've literally been using my whole life also. I'm not sure why I'm no longer allowed to live. Not that I've listened to these people, but it's still kind of disorienting to have a bunch of people tell you you're no longer welcome to do the things that helped shape who you are. Like I said, there is still so much life to live after 30. Am I supposed to be miserable that whole time? Are they planning to be miserable when they turn 30? What are suitable old people activities? I've taken up embroidery recently, so I guess that's one checked. But am I supposed to sit around and talk about taxes all day? I'd really rather not. Do you ever feel this way? How do you ignore it? And so my response to this was, it's me. So I had many responses to this, that I totally get this. I think that actually there are a lot of fandom authors who are not going to reveal their age who are older. And I think you can tell based on how they write and what they write about. The best sex that you read in fanfiction is not coming from a teenager who's never seen a dick before. And I assure you there's a lot of them. As you know, I have moved a lot of my fics to Wattpad. I'm not going to disparage the youth of fandom, okay? Let me just say, I think it's great that there are all these young people finding a community where they might not in real life, you know. I'm glad that there's a community for them and they feel accepted there, but it is a little bit exclusionary, and it's quite... The demographic of Wattpad reader is very young. And I know this based on their comments. I know this based on a lot of things, but I can tell you from reading Wattpad comments, which I don't do very often because it's sort of overwhelming. I think on Wattpad you can just comment like on any line you want to, so it's not just at the end of the chapter. It's just kind of like willy-nilly. And I also think that the nature of using Wattpad is that the whole fic is like, it's like a playground for discourse. So I've seen a lot of references to masturbation using alternative things as lube, and I've seen a lot of references to dick sizes that people think are impressive, and it just gives me the general impression of people who have not had sex before, or at least have not been in, you know, sort of intimate sexual relationships, by which I mean committed, lasting ones. This is just my impression. I'm not making any judgments about it. I'm just saying that it seems like it would be very overwhelming as an older person in fandom to see these sorts of comments and realize, oh dear God, I'm too old for this. In some ways, that just reflects that you're like in the wrong corner of fandom. If you're over 30, I do not recommend Wattpad. Definitely AO3 is like a, let's say, organized. You know, each of the fanfiction sites has like a different culture. And yeah. So it's definitely possible that you are just in like the wrong corner of fandom if you feel like you're surrounded by a lot of people who are very young. But I think that in general, you're correct. The attitude is that like this is something for the young, and they question like, once you're older, why are you still here? So that's kind of what we're talking about here. So the other part of my answer was that, like, let's be real, for women over 30, the only hobby that's technically acceptable is motherhood. If you're 30 and you haven't had children yet, people are asking you probably on an almost daily basis, are you having children? I am currently pregnant, and people will not stop asking me when I'm going to have my next child, which, sidebar, is not going to happen. Obviously, never say never, but I have to tell you, in like a real life, we haven't done petty grievances in a while, but if I were to do a petty grievance, I know you've gotten this idea from previous videos, so I'm not going to dwell on it, but I want to tell you, because no one told me, that it is very difficult to get past the sort of self-esteem, vanity issues that come with being pregnant. I feel like I'm trapped in somebody else's body. I feel like I don't understand how this body works. I feel like it doesn't work for me anymore. Like, all sorts of things go wrong. Mr. Blake asked me the other day, like at dinner, I kind of like sighed heavily, and he asked me what was wrong. And I was like, I'm just like a little bit overheated. And so the top, like the bottom of my boobs are like currently sticking to the top of my stomach. And like, he does his best not to laugh, but like, how can you not laugh, right? Like, this is my life now, is I just have these sort of, nothing is ever quite comfortable. And it really takes its toll. You know, I've mentioned before that it's taken a toll on my sex drive, which has been like a defining feature of my personality for basically my whole life. I've said before that I like, you know, I crush easily. I can have crushes on anyone, anytime. It like comes on so quickly. I am a romance writer. I enjoy writing sex, but now I don't feel comfortable in my body, and the like merest idea of sex is like this like overwhelming sense of inadequacy. So you know, I don't know who or what I'm representing, but if you needed to hear that for whatever reason, there it is. I am doing okay. You know, I'm about to be in my 3rd trimester. I'm doing fine, but I do not want to do this again. I have dreams where I just scream. I just scream and scream and scream, and it's this uncontrollable rage, and I like try to hit things and nothing's working, or I scream and I don't get the like cathartic feeling. So like my subconscious is melting. So this is not for everyone. The end. But I think we all understand that like, it's actually a fairly new phenomenon that women would be over 30 and have their own lives. We couldn't even have our own bank accounts. We literally could not have our own money until like the 70s. So the idea of a woman continuing to have a persona beyond her marriage or even beyond her work is very new. I don't want to be reductive and say that this idea that fandom is for the young has, you know, underlying misogynistic qualities to it, because misogyny is one of those things like racism where like you can't just point to like an anvil falling and it's like there's racism. It's just like a little trickle sometimes, something that you can't always put a finger to. And I think in this case, the internalized misogyny of young women being like, why are old women here, is something they are not even able to process yet. This feeling that people should age out of it. It's, yeah. And I don't want to direct this conversation directly to only people who are over 30 as well. I definitely want this to be relevant to teenagers, because I don't want you to fall in exactly what this person was saying. I don't want you to fall into this trap of thinking that you should like get your life together and your priorities should change in some way that means that you no longer get to have the interests that you used to, or you no longer get to be part of the community that you are part of. So to sort of follow up on that, this is another person. It was so validating to see other people feel the same, because I feel like I so often see this conversation brushed off like, I can't believe these grown adults are letting kids upset them, which is first off not the point. I mean, I do think people should stop pretending that our words and actions can't hurt people who are older, richer, or more famous than us, etc. Just use of the internet, yeah. But of course I don't expect a 15-year-old to understand what it's like to be 30. That's a literal lifetime away for them. They spent the first 15 years developing and drastically changing their interests, so of course they assume it keeps going like that because they have no other frame of reference. The problem is they get this idea from somewhere. Someone is out there passing on the idea that adults who still enjoy things from their childhood are failures who need to grow up. That once a woman reaches a certain age, she should be doing nothing except wanting kids, having kids, or raising kids, and they should be mocked if they do non-mom approved activities while also having a family. I've seen so many people who say they feel like they've missed out on their time to have fun by the time they're 25. I spent the last 6 years panicked about turning 30 and everything I had to enjoy before I couldn't anymore, and then I turned 30 and nothing happened. What a waste of energy that was. I want better for people. I want the ones who are younger to not waste their time feeling like they only have a few years left, and I want the older ones to stop being shamed for enjoying life the way they want. And I think I'm 100% on board with this. I think that it is such a crime, especially for women in their 20s. It's hard to be a woman in your 20s because that's supposed to be like the greatest time of your life. That's like the time when you're most desirable to men, and also the time when you're like allowed to have hobbies because you don't have to be grown up until you're 30. But then it's like this looming deadline of you have to have figured this out at essentially an arbitrary time. This is probably the same thing for men too. That's like the Forbes 30 under 30. It's like this random idea that like we have picked 30 as the age when you should have things figured out. And it's damaging to everyone, this idea that after 30, you can't have hobbies anymore. This is why middle-aged men like go crazy, buy cars and get really into cycling. Mr. Lake's already done that, so like, we don't have to worry about being surprised by that. You know, we're talking about women in fandom because that's what we are. It's what I am and what people who come to me usually are. But I think it's just a generalized attitude that's like, after 30, we're supposed to not be who we were anymore. That youth is over, and therefore enjoying things for the sake of enjoying them is over. But I think that's so damaging in so many ways. My friend said something interesting the other day. She was asking me about my birth plan. This is a friend who doesn't have children and children are not on the near horizon for her or anything. She was just sort of asking out of curiosity because I'm the first person she knows that's pregnant. And truthfully, neither of us really have friends that have gone through this, so it is relatively new. And she was asking if I had a birth plan. And I was like, honestly, I don't have a plan. What I have is like the ghost of a 16th century woman who like lives next to me and just kind of looks at me and is like, why would you not use every possible modern medicine? Just don't die. Like, that's as much of a plan as I have, is my 16th century ghost being like, just don't die. And what she said was great. It was, I think that as women, we carry around a lot of ghosts. And I think that that is very true. And so the reason I'm applying this here is this idea of like the ghosts of women before us who were not allowed to have interests. This is part of the reason that we read The Awakening for Spell. It's just this idea that like pressure to be a wife and a mother. And once you have checked these things off the list, if you have no other passions, and you're not permitted to have them, it's just this feeling of why even exist, and our agency, our autonomy. I mean, I agree with the asker that it's not just complaining about young women devaluing us. It's this idea that if we don't get to have these things that we're passionate about, then why even be here? Because it seems like what's expected is we're supposed to give life to other things, and, we're supposed to be mothers and wives, and what does that mean about who we are? And I think that it is a very new thing, this idea that we continue to be people beyond this sort of, like, I don't think that a middle-age crisis, like, that shouldn't be a thing, because if you're allowed to have your interests and pursue them, one of the things that the first asker brought up was the idea of personhood. If you're allowed to maintain your personhood and it continues to have value regardless of your age, then you don't run into any crises. I wouldn't have all the questions that I do about people worried about failure or not getting not getting into the right university and what's going to happen to them later. Like, all of this just gets compounded because of this idea that by 30 we should be settled with whatever the previous generation had and more, which is not possible for us. And truthfully, we haven't had these freedoms long enough to even have like a typical idea of what 30 plus womanhood should look like, because it wasn't that long ago that we didn't have the option to even have hobbies, because marriage was an economic proposition, because marriage was something that you had to have in order to have a bank account. Like all of these things have made it so that it is kind of up to us how we treat women older and younger and what we expect of them. And I think that, as always, I say this all the time, the only thing you can really control is yourself. I can take an element from the suffragette scandal, the thimble idea. That's like, we're not trying to change everything. We're trying to make things easier for the women who are looking for that, the way that you're expected to be a woman. It's not very old. And we're not trying to overhaul centuries of misogyny. We are trying to open the door for other women to be allowed to have their experience as they want it. We are opening the door for women to assert their personhood. I mean, what is the conclusion there? It's that, yeah, there are going to be times when people are going to make you feel ashamed of your hobbies. But what you do with that shame, or how you internalize that feeling, which was the initial question, is I think you just don't let it stick. How do you let anything just bounce off of you? I don't know, but I think it's just believing in your value. Really, the goal is just to make things a little bit more comfortable for people who come after us, who are the young women right now, who will someday come to this conclusion. And I know it can be hard to watch people not realize that those doors are open for them, but what a privilege that is. To not even know that people before you couldn't have that or didn't have that, or, AO3 exists in order to protect creators who were, getting hit with copyright cease and desist and stuff. People talk all the time about knowing your fandom history. One thing that has been a really interesting conversation that's again overlapping with our spell read is the idea that the romance community is very stigmatized, but it's actually it has a very interesting history, because even the determination of what makes a romance is something that romance authors have had to fight for, and are continuing to fight for. I've already been talking for so long that I don't want to go off on that. Hopefully not. But, but I think it's important to know, that everything that feels novel today was someone opening the door. And as much as we can acknowledge that and honor our own interests and hobbies, and these fandom communities exist in order for like-minded people to find a place where they can be themselves, and to do so in a way without facing any sort of repercussions, which is really usually not possible IRL. So to the young women, don't forget that those communities were established by your fandom elders and who are probably still around, because shockingly, I agree with the first asker that I'm not that different. I feel like I really subscribe to the idea that, who you in your teens, you kind of like figure out what you like. In your 20s, you figure out who you are. And then in your 30s, you start to get to do it on purpose. Your 30s is really the first time that you have the expendable income to actually pursue the things that you love. That's when you can, ideally, hopefully, that's when you have enough money to buy the books that you love, or to, contribute to the art that you enjoy, and to kind of build your atmosphere and stuff. That's what's cool about being 30, is like you're an adult and no one has to make your decisions for you anymore. And so I think it's just, as much as it sucks to be told you shouldn't be in this space anymore, this is the first time that you can really be part of this space without the barriers of like needing your mother's credit card. There are things to look forward to. And I think I have lost the train here. As you know, we started off very distracted. So I think I'm just going to end now. But yeah, hopefully that, you know, that stirs something. If it brings up another separate discussion, cool. I just want to remind you that I get asked all the time from people who are like, I think I want to change careers. I think I want to change this. Is it too late? It's never too late. And remember that this is part of all part of the same problem, this sort of arbitrary deadline that's like, there is some place that you should have reached by a certain age that doesn't exist. Not in fandom, not in your professional life, not in your romantic life. There are no timeline markers. And the way you do this, the way you live your life is your decision, and it's never too late. So that's kind of why we have these discussions. The purpose of telling you that you can always begin again, you can always start over, you can always carve out a place for yourself that feels right, is for things like this, so that we don't have to fear getting older. All right, that's way too much. This has been me, Olivie Blake, not writing, and I'll see you next week.